Welcome to The Longer Game. If you're listening to a show about retail being reimagined. If you'd like to connect with The Longer Game, look for The Longer Game at thelongergame.com and on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn at The Longer Game. We're here to talk about retail, why it's changing, how it's changing, and what you can expect in the future. We're not trying to take ourselves too seriously, but we do want to know what that retail landscape is going to look like. I hope you enjoy your time listening to this podcast. We try to keep it as quick as possible because we don't want to waste your time, but we want to keep you informed. Thanks for tuning in. Now, here's the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Longer Game, the podcast where we talk about retail reimagined, focusing on what's happening in retail now and the future of retail, and where we just have conversations about what that looks like. Today, joining me is James DeHajo. He is the co-founder of Merchant Spring, which is a software that is helping many brands and sellers expand across multiple marketplaces. I'll let him talk a little bit about that, so that I think he's going to do a much better job of it than I would. But James, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you doing so. And I think you're 12 hours ahead of me right now, so it's 9 p.m. Or
Yeah, look, I am in the future, Michael. It's
that's
11.
right. You're already there. What is it like?
It's no different than the past, given COVID.
Oh, okay, cool.
It is 11:15 p.m. here, by the way.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you're 14 hours ahead. Okay, I know that there's a lot of you're in Australia. There's a lot of working relationships sometimes with people in the Philippines and in Australia because of the fact that you're on the same time zone. Is that pretty correct?
We're close. We're I
Okay.
think 3 hours apart at the moment. So
Well, in Australia is a huge, like there are multiple time zones in Australia. It's not like Hawaii. So I mean, it's a very big country.
yes, it is a very, very big country with very few people, Michael. So
It's almost like Canada as an island, but much more sunny and probably more pleasant. I mean, not
yeah.
pleasant. The people in Canada, I'm assuming, are nice. At least that's what the movies and TV shows tell me. But yeah, so tell us a little bit about Merchant Spring. I know that you help sellers on Amazon, Walmart, eBay, but tell me more about the focus of what that does and what your goal and intent is.
Yeah, so to put it simply and without sounding like a salesman here, it's Merchant Spring's DNA is about really just surfacing key metrics when you're selling on marketplaces. So to give you an example, if you're a seller in France, you might have an Amazon account connected to our tool, a Cdiscount account connected to our tool, an FNAC account connected, and an eBay account connected. Because and as a French-based seller, you'd be able to see all your marketplaces in our tool. Our tool will surface all the key metrics, let you see them all in real time, let you know what's going on in a matter of seconds, versus logging into all the back ends of those marketplaces and wasting your time with CSVs and the like. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Without sounding like a salesman.
We encourage salesmen. I mean, I think when I go out and excuse me, when I go out and prospect and I'm looking for clients, I don't think there's a need to necessarily beat around the bush, but it is how you present yourself and are you targeting your audience? If I was just going out and reaching out to, I don't know, like Boeing and trying to say, hey, we can help you sell on Amazon, like that's obviously very not targeted. But if I'm going to a specific brand and saying, I believe that there's more potential for your brand, let's have a conversation, that's very, very relevant. So, honestly, being on the show, it's an opportunity for you to plug what it is that you're doing. You and I connected a little while ago, and I think one of the most interesting things as I start to expand my perspective of what retail looks like across the world, Amazon is a very big player here in the US. I would say probably in Canada as well. Not as big of a marketplace or just market in general in Canada. That's why a lot of people start in the US, especially with Amazon selling. But as we go out and my agency even looks at, how can we service other marketplaces? What's the opportunity there? I'm noticing that there's a lot of regional players, just like how Amazon is, I mean, somewhat regional to the US. They're wanting to be international and they've got, sites in UK, all throughout the EU, United Arab Emirates, Singapore, Netherlands. That's still EU, but Australia. They have Brazil, but there's no FBA there. It's still fulfilled by merchant, which FBA stands for fulfillment by Amazon. They're the ones that are fulfilling goods. For anyone that is not clear on that and don't want to do business jargon and say the ACOS and the metrics and the TLC and the TPS reports or whatever the Office Space jokes about. I think it was TPS reports. Anyway, there's a lot of regional players out there, and I think it's important that brands who are, for brands who are used to being in brick and mortar stores, they get that there's a lot of different merchants out there, and so they have to play to some of the regional players. And like here in the States, Kroger is a huge grocer, but they have Smith's and they have Fred Meyer and they have all these other subsidiaries. So it's important that you know which stores you're going into. Someone in Florida might want to see you in Publix. They don't care about a Kroger because maybe there's one and there's like 5 Publix for every one Kroger or whatever the case might be. So there's a lot of regional players. Can you tell me more about what the retail landscape looks like in Australia? And you're seeing, Amazon come up in the US, and of course there's a lot of news about that, but then they start coming into your country. I know eBay is very big in Australia, and that's actually where I got started selling was eBay, which seems crazy now. But there's many categories that do $1 billion in the U.S. each year. Most of the product that's on there is new, although I do buy and sell used music gear. That's how I got started on there. But yeah, tell us about what Amazon coming into your country looks like from your perspective, knowing that eBay is already really big. There's likely some other regional players as well.
Yeah, so look, Amazon's been here since the end of 2017, so it's coming up to 4 years. Um, when they launched, they already had somewhat of a presence. You were able to buy like Kindle stuff or some basic
Gotcha.
digital items. So since then, in 4 years, they've gone from I believe, I mean, I could be wrong, but I believe the kind of Kindle-esque Amazon presence in Australia was around 1 million visits per month, something like that.
Oh, wow.
And now, I just checked the other day, as of July this year, I think they were up to 30 plus million visits a month, right?
A
So,
month. Wow.
yeah,
Yeah,
a
that's
month.
huge. And what's the
So,
population in Australia?
20 million, about 20
20
million.
million.
So,
Okay,
look,
wow. So multiple people,
it's
multiple
probably
visits per person.
it's probably my wife visiting Amazon 200,000 times a day. But
Yeah.
the point I'm trying to make is, it's grown like crazy here. Um, and to your point earlier, Michael, there are really serious players here in Australia. I mean, there are more marketplaces here than I've probably had hot meals. They're, you know,
Wow.
they're,
Okay.
they're, they're, to give you an example,
Either you're getting starved of hot meals or there's just really a lot of marketplaces.
No, there really is a lot of marketplaces. So to give you a name, for example, there's a marketplace here called Catch, a marketplace here called MyDeal, a marketplace here called Click Central. That sounds all familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is they are popping up and they are actually really serious. You'll actually see sellers actually drive more sales from Catch than they do on Amazon, even though Amazon's growing
Wow.
and all that kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
what I'm trying to say is the retail landscape, at least digitally here, is more and more marketplaces are coming. Each one seems to be, just as high performing as the next, right? Or depending on the category, may even outperform Amazon or even eBay, for example.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but
And eBay's kind of like the original marketplace in Australia. I mean, it's been there for a while, right?
yeah, yeah. Look, I mean, I think people at one point were saying, yeah, just eBay it, which means buy something from eBay or sell on
Yeah.
eBay.
Instead of
Um,
saying Amazon. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
people do that here in the US, like just find it on Amazon.
yeah, exactly. So look, to your point earlier, the region, the kind of domestic players here in Australia are pretty serious. But I would say that Amazon, although it's growing nicely over the last 4 years, it is really, really picking up the pace. Like each year, I'm seeing like huge leaps and bounds in both their offering, the traffic they're attracting, and anecdotally, like I just speak to people, even for example, my mother, right, it's an older lady, she's bought online and all that, but as soon as she goes to Amazon, in Australia, I mean, this is the experience we get here. She's like, okay, I want to buy AirPods. buys it in the afternoon. The next day in the morning, they arrive, right? For her,
Wow,
she,
and that is a huge. I mean, how many miles across is Australia? It's not like
oh, thousands. It's like
yeah, I
five
mean, it's
hours
I think
flight
it's
between each
okay, I think
coast.
it's like as big as I mean, it's I know it's way bigger than Texas, but I mean, it's like a part of the middle of the country for the US to put it in size perspective. So that's there has to be enough fulfillment centers to get it there that quickly. It can't be, you know, 3 towns over and necessarily get to someone that quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And that they have been, they have been aggressively rolling out fulfillment centers all around the country. And but they realize, and to use my mum as an example, that experience, it's so crazy. It outperforms eBay. It outperforms, a branded site or whatever. My
Mhm.
mum's, in her words, is, well, I'm not going to shop anywhere else from now on. I mean, that is like a
Yeah,
loyalty convert, and she's not even, forget about it talking about Prime membership or whatever. Like, this is done and dusted, and I can just imagine, once the population kind of gets that experience, like, why would you go back to eBay? I mean, eBay still has a place here, but I'm just saying that,
sure.
the things that Amazon are doing here is really kind of pushing the boundary, for the customer, but also kind of pushing the boundaries for marketplaces as well. Like, I talked about Catch earlier. Actually, the
Yeah.
management team there are former Amazon, so they realize that,
Okay.
Amazon does this, and kind of they're all pushing each other. And I think we'll get to a fairly diversified omni-channel environment here. Um, where everyone has its place, but I think it's just going to be a survival of the best offering or the best service, um,
Yeah.
going forward.
There's a there's a similar theme in the US of what when you look at Amazon, what they've done and changed from a buyer or a consumer expectation level. So if you go to a website here in the US and you see a shipping cost on there, it's going to look weird to you because you're used to seeing free shipping. Now, let's be clear, you're paying for the shipping no matter what. It is merely
Optics.
visual.
Mm.
It's very much optics that is making you feel better about this purchase. But nonetheless, you like seeing free shipping. You want to see, 2 to 3 day delivery. And those are more standards now that even 5 years ago weren't quite standards. Getting something in, I think, 5 days, maybe, a week's time was not too long. And now Amazon's focusing on, despite honestly some of the challenges they're seeing initially due to COVID and the overloading of the logistics system, which Amazon is a trusted brand or a trusted logistics company. That's essentially what they are. Yes, they have product that they sell, private label stuff, but that's a small part of the very small part of the marketplace. I would say even less than 1% of the offerings or brands that are on there. And I know there's a lot of horror stories that people have told about this one brand getting ripped off and this other brand getting ripped off. I just don't see that being the majority of people, although it is terrible when something like that actually happens. Anyway, I digress. There's a change in the expectations that people have because of what Amazon's pushed, continually pushing to do better. And what I've heard in the past is competing against themselves, trying to, they're doing things that put their what they're currently doing sort of out of business or make them unnecessary. So not being a Prime member, maybe didn't matter 10 years ago on Amazon, but now being a Prime member is everything. And especially from a brand's perspective, if you're selling on Amazon, you're fulfilling yourself. People that are Prime members that spend at least 2 times what non-Prime members spend, they're more active on the site. Of course, they're paying 119, I think, bucks now a year to get access to that, including media, all that stuff. But they're not even seeing your product. And so I think from a regional perspective, or from a domestic perspective, in your case, James, if people are not on Amazon and on Catch and on Click Central, if they're not on all those marketplaces, which is where all the consumers are, they're actually losing out on potential market share because they're only visible in, one of 5 places online.
Yeah, look, I definitely think that's the sentiment here. I mean, it's funny when I speak to guys in the US, some of them are saying, forget about Walmart, forget about anything else, just hyper focus on Amazon, because, that's where you get kind of dollars back for your effort. But here in Australia, everyone thinks, well, I need to be everywhere. I need to sell everywhere because everywhere is just as requires just the same amount of effort. I mean, we're talking about Australia, right? So completely different kind of demographic, culture, people,
Sure.
etc. But yeah, the selling mantra here is to exactly what you said. I need to be everywhere because otherwise I'm going to miss out. Like that's the kind of logic we have here as a seller, if that makes sense.
Yeah. By the way, mantra is a very cool word, but you said it even cooler by saying mantra. I must have a very weird accent for you, I imagine. But yeah, sometimes I wish I could say words cool like that, or like I'll hear a British accent and it's like how they shape some of the vowels, and I'm like, man, that just seems so foreign and crazy. But I know a lot of people, probably outside of the U.S., are like, well, hello, I'm gonna go to the United States and have a barbecue or whatever, and make fun of people being hillbillies, which I get. So I think that's a speaks to why being understanding of what the native landscape looks like is so important. One example is I was speaking with someone who owns a translation company, and they help sellers specifically on Amazon to translate their listings into the country that language that they're selling in. So if they're going to Germany, they need to have stuff translated into German. Now, just translating it with Google Translate, it's not going to look trustworthy. It's going to look like when Chinese manufacturers are selling here in the US and they're translating or they're trying to do it on their own, and it doesn't look professional. It looks inauthentic, and so people are going to stray away from those sometimes. Sometimes price might, be the only thing. Like, I don't care if it's broken English. I just want the product here and I want it cheap. But you have to know, when it comes to translation, localization is important. So there might be certain dialects or certain tones of voice. What I heard from the translation specialist was that Germany, Amazon copy in the US is like, this is going to totally change your life, and it's very sales focused, and they're talking about lifestyle. But in Germany, they just want the technical aspect. And I don't know a ton of Germans, but yes, there is a very, maybe James, you can speak to this, but there's very straightforward, linear style. It's not, going off into a bunch of different areas. It's just like, this thing is 2 inches wide, it's 5 inches deep, and it will fix your car battery, or I don't know, something like that. It has to be very technical. And if you try to sell what's going on maybe in the UK or Canada or US, you're going to fail in that marketplace.
Yeah, look, I definitely agree with that. And I think even within the English speaking countries, there are material differences in language. For example, we don't use the word flip flop here. And
Okay.
the word we use in place of that. And that's just one example. But
What is the word you use instead of flip
we
flop?
use thongs here in Australia. That is what we call it.
See,
So
now thongs here in the US means something very, very different.
yeah,
It means the
I'm
tiny
I'm
little
aware.
string between your butt cheeks.
Yeah, I'm aware. I'm aware. But
Yes,
as a real practical
I got you.
example, like
Yeah.
there are serious differences, and I think you're
People
exactly
wouldn't
right.
even know, probably, if you said flip flop, they would be like, I don't know what that is.
No, they'd say, "Are you
Okay.
struggling? Are you struggling to make a decision?" That's what flip flop really means here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I
So
mean, that's a great point. So even going from English speaking to English speaking country, you're going to have very different regional differences.
yeah, and I think I also agree with your point about the actual way the copy is used. I mean, the underlying practicalities of writing Amazon copy, like keywords and all that type of stuff. Yes, that's still probably the same. But I think in Australia, I know of some categories here that it's probably somewhat like what you heard about Germany. It has to be very detailed, has to explain all the
Okay.
kind of practical technicalities because people are like looking for that here. Fitment data, blah blah blah, etc. It's highly critical rather than saying change your life or use it on your desk and it'll be wonderful.
Change your life.
You know what I
This
mean?
paperweight is going to change your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with you, Michael.
Talk to me about, so you were talking about France and how there's different marketplaces there. Talk to me
Mm.
about what the retail landscape looks like there. And I think also something good to know is there's a lot of brands here in the US that start out digital or digitally native. And so they might start on Amazon, get their own, web store using BigCommerce or Shopify or Magento or whatever whatever platform that they're wanting to use, WordPress. I think that's kind of going out of style. Of course, Shopify gets a lot of news. and people mistakenly see that as a platform. And I said platform as in the vendor that you're using. Your platform is your own web store. Shopify is not just a platform where you get on like Amazon and you just put stuff up and then people come to it. You still have to drive traffic to it.
Mm,
That's one of the big differences between e-commerce and Amazon. E-commerce in general and Amazon is we don't have developers on our staff. That's a need for e-commerce industry agencies. They have to developers are a big part of what they do because they're fixing things that break. They're in charge of the interface. There's code. You don't have that with Amazon. It's like here's this box, here's this. You have to create imagery that looks beautiful, and you have to work within, put up your own content. But other than that, you don't have control over user experience. So that's something to consider. But there's a lot of brands that start out digitally native and then start to go into stores. France is a market that you know about, as well as Australia. What are you seeing? Are you seeing a lot of digitally native brands start online and start to expand offline? Is the focus still very much the online presence right now? Um, or what does that look like?
yeah, it's very interesting over there. Actually, one of our kind of friends of the business over there wrote an article for us about the large amount of marketplaces over there. But I would say, interestingly, it's very similar to Australia. So, your question about what's the importance of different channels and for digitally native brands and so on. Like in France, for example, this partner of ours called Trade Booster, they always talk about Rakuten. Like for them, like Rakuten France is just such an important channel and so on and so forth. Then they
And to
talk
be
about,
clear, it's an actual sales channel for products,
yeah,
correct?
yeah, great. It's just
Because
another market.
it used to be that way in the US. They've now changed it over to be like a coupon and deal site,
Yeah,
which
so
is
in
so
France,
Rakuten bought. There was another company that I think was I can't remember who it was, but they bought this company because my wife would get money back from them, and now that's what Rakuten is here. So
yeah,
it's not even the
so
same thing.
yeah, it's a full blown like regular marketplace over there in the US. Sorry, in France.
Okay,
But I would say as well that this partner of ours, they talk about Rakuten France, they talk about C discount, they talk about FNAC, they talk about Darty, and then they talk about okay, then it's Amazon and eBay. So
okay,
interestingly, that kind of dynamic of being very much aware of if you're a digitally native brand or otherwise actually, you're very much aware of all the other channels you need to be on, and actually some of them are just as important or if not more important than Amazon. And things like Cdiscount, Michael, I will share, have functions similar to that of Amazon, like they have fulfilled by Cdiscount as an example. So you can
okay,
actually kind of trade in the same way. It's just as easy. You kind of like, as to your point, you just get a Cdiscount account, you do your beautiful imagery, there's no code, you just get up and selling so long as you kind of like got
yeah.
everything shipshape.
I think I think a lot of things. Sometimes I last night I had a dream and there were a bunch of alligators in the dream. Um, I don't know why I wanted to share that, but I just felt like it could be relevant for some people. But that some countries, U.S. I would say probably as well, has a tendency to think a lot about themselves. I know I've heard that about Italians, but other countries, there's a lot of pride in their country, and so they think things outside of their country are not different. It's all the same. And the more global we get, the more we realize how we're all humans. We all have a lot of similarities, but the way in which we do things is very, very different. So, from a brand perspective, if you're in the U.S. and you're going outside of the U.S., don't just expand to the Amazon marketplace there. Look for regional players, talk to people. There are tons of companies that, because of this need for getting on multiple marketplaces at a time, there are now companies that all they do is build your catalog in one place and then send it out to these different areas, different websites using catalog feeds. Now, this is something that Kroger or other big companies have, maybe P&Gs of the world and Kimberly Clark's and Johnson and Johnson. They've been using these catalog feed companies for a long time, sending stuff out throughout the web, and it's like very expensive. I mean, it's like 50, maybe to $100,000 a year for these types of tools. That's nothing for them because they're getting in the hundreds of millions of sales, so it's not a big deal. But now there's software being created for these smaller brands, and by smaller I mean under 5 million, under 10 million, to make it more accessible so that they can send their products out to multiple marketplaces. I'm seeing that here in the US. It's something that as we, look and explore like walmart.com or eBay, things like that, for brands that we're working with, we notice a need for that. And of course, Amazon has some special requirements, but if you're able to replicate what you've done in one marketplace and bring it over to 4 others, you've now just expanded your market reach, and you haven't had to do an exponentially different or even a multiplication amount of work, or your multiple's not double. It's like 1.5 times the work to get into, 6 times the marketplaces.
Yeah, look, I think what's really interesting, and you just reminded me, Michael, is that that type of selling using kind of catalog feeds, as you put it, funnily enough, is it has been the oldest way of selling here in Australia. It's almost to the point when Amazon came here, some sellers were saying to me, "What do you mean I don't need a catalog feed? What do you mean FBA doesn't need
Mm,
it? It doesn't need an inventory feed. What do you mean FBA doesn't need an order feed?" And I'll be looking at them like, trying to go, well, that's how you sell on Amazon. You send the stock in and they fulfill it and whatever.
yeah.
Because here, everyone's like initial thought is, okay, I'm going to sell on marketplace, I need a catalog feed. That's like the first
Okay.
thing they think about. So it's very interesting that for you guys it's kind of like, this not new thing, but it's kind of like a new way of thinking. Here it's like the
It's a new
only
way of
way.
thinking for smaller brands for sure. A lot of the bigger brands or brand owners have been doing it, but for everyone that's coming out of the woodwork, and that's especially digitally native, and if they're starting on Amazon, going somewhere else and realizing I need a catalog feed, like just going from Amazon.com to Walmart.com, having a catalog feed is going to be far better, because when you try and go and make updates in Walmart system, like once that first thing is there, it's even worse than Amazon in that it sticks. And so trying to get support cases in to fix that are almost impossible. You're better off just paying, a couple $100 a month, whatever the case might be, to get a catalog feed. And it might seem like a big chunk for software, but think about what the revenue potential is. Then it seems like a lot less. And I don't have comparisons of revenue right off the bat. But even if you were, going to get an extra $200,000 in sales, $500 a month is probably not that big of a deal. What are what are so Amazon has been adjusting some of its, or coming into to Australia, and like to your, to what your point you said about your mom, how I'm not going to shop anywhere else. They're going in and they're pushing the envelope and changing things, and that's a big part of why people have adopted them so quickly here in the U.S. or just they become such a big player. What are some of the other marketplaces doing, as Amazon kind of pushes the envelope there?
Yeah, so some of the marketplaces here have already started developing their own native fulfillment. So fulfilled by blah, whatever it is, whatever
Yeah,
marketplace it is. That way, they obviously get to control the delivery times, right? They
yeah,
can influence. They don't have to say, "Oh, Mr. Seller, set your delivery time to blah." They can say, "Well, I'm fulfilling it. I'm going to do it this way." So that's one thing. Second thing is Amazon. As you know, has a its own self-service advertising, and can bid on keywords and all that.
yeah,
Marketplaces here in Australia haven't traditionally had that. They've had like rudimentary versions of that where you bid, some percentage and you get a spot, or it's manual. You have to buy with money and invoices to get a spot on the marketplace. Because
wow.
of
So like pay us
Amazon,
$100 and we'll put you on here for the week or something
yeah,
like that.
and they'll send you an
Okay.
invoice and you pay it and then you have to deal with someone and all that. So Amazon's full self-service, as you know. So
Yeah.
Amazon has actually pushed the envelope for all these other marketplaces. They're now thinking, well, A, I can make more money from charging sellers on a self-service basis. B, it's more giving more levers and so on. So that's two examples. And the third example is obviously Prime membership. Everyone knows Prime and all that. Other
Mhm.
marketplaces here are starting to kind of realize, okay, I have to have this, and I have to kind of have this loyalty program. And then now I have to offer more than just kind of early access to deals and da 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 da. So to answer your question, those are three examples. I mean, I could go on for ages, but those are really interesting because
Let's do the whole rest of the show, just changes. Go.
yeah.
I'm just
But
kidding.
yeah, to give a real practical example, like we have this thing called eBay Plus in Australia. I don't think you
Yeah.
guys. I don't. Do you
We
have that in
we
the US?
don't, but Walmart just introduced Walmart Plus, and it's like basically you get some additional stuff on groceries. It's not what Prime membership is. So there's a long way to go there. But I don't think there's eBay Plus here in the States.
Yeah, so we've got that, and that's just one of every other marketplace I mentioned, like Catch, MyDeal, Kogan, Click Central. They all have some version of a loyalty program. So yeah, there's three things that Amazon's helping push the envelope for everyone else.
Was eBay the first to have eBay Plus? Was that even before Amazon and Prime came in?
I think it was just after, and at around the point
Okay.
that FBA kind of went live here in Australia, eBay actually had a branded native fulfillment service here, like this massive partnership with this business called Fulfilio, where you could send your stock to Fulfilio, then it would basically
Okay.
just fulfill your eBay orders, exactly like FBA, funnily enough. So,
Yeah,
um,
eBay here in the States had started something where if you're a seller, you can send your product to other sellers and they'll fulfill it for you, which I always thought was interesting. It was like the and when I say like crowdfunded version of what fulfilled by Amazon is, and by crowdfunded I mean it's done by or supplied by all the other sellers that are on Amazon. They're not guaranteeing anything, but they're saying, hey, we'll ship your products for you because maybe you don't want to do that, or it could be potentially easier for you. And then also eBay gets an opportunity to get a little bit extra
mm,
cash in their pockets,
yeah, interesting. It's almost like a shared. It's almost like what is it like?
like rideshare, like Uber,
Yeah,
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 fulfillment share.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, interesting.
James, if a lot of the audience that we're talking to is probably based out of the US, where would you, if someone in the US and they said, I want to expand outside of the US, where would you tell them to go and why?
Well, look, if they're an Amazon seller, right, which I'm assuming they are, I'd say,
Yeah.
look, come to Australia because you can reuse your expertise. You already know what you're doing. You can have a competitive advantage because most people here are still learning Amazon, and it's English. Save for some localization, but I'd say
Just
come
don't say
here.
flip flop.
Yeah, but I think that the main point is that our Amazon here in Australia still has a lot of room to grow. Like we have not hit
Okay.
that ceiling. Like I was looking at the traffic of the US, like it's just 18 months ago, it's like two and a bit billion. Last month, it's two and a bit billion. It's the same.
Yeah.
Here, it's like, 18 months ago, it's black and white, chalk and cheese, totally different. So
Okay.
there's opportunity
Wait,
there.
what was that you just said? Chunk and cheese?
Chalk and cheese.
Tell me about that. I've never heard that before. I also heard someone recently say this past week, someone was like, how you doing? They're like, oh, I'm hanging in there like a hair and a biscuit. And I've never heard that before, but I'm like, okay, I get it. Like a hair hanging out of a biscuit, kind of barely in there. What is chalk and cheese? Just two different things.
Yeah, it's polarization, total opposites.
I'm gonna start saying that. And I'm gonna pretend that I came up with it here in the U.S. So come to Amazon in Australia. What about some of the other marketplaces? If you were gonna say the first place you should go outside of Amazon is this
Catch.
marketplace,
If it was talking
Catch.
Australia, definitely catch. I mean, I know that everyone knows their executive team are former Amazon guys, so
Okay.
they've
So
got
did
an
they?
appetite for US sellers.
Okay. So did they leave Amazon and create this new marketplace, or was it already there and they just brought on a lot of Amazon executives?
No, I was already there, and those executives have just joined.
Okay, man, that must yeah. It sounds like. Do you know what total retail in Australia looks like, and do you have any idea of what e-commerce versus in store looks like? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here for metrics.
No, I don't. I don't. I mean, a lot of people ask, but I'm not across the detail of kind of like physical stores and that. But
Do you know if there was a big increase in e-commerce purchases when the pandemic hit? Because there was like 8 to 10 years worth of growth here in the states just from a quarter to quarter perspective, and really a lot of it was like a huge like there was a day in March 13th. I remember where a lot of there was like I think a national mask mandate or whatever the case might be. There was a lot of stuff where people just kind of dropped off the map for that one day, and then sales really started skyrocketing for a lot of things. Did you see that kind of jump over in Australia?
yeah, I mean, I don't have the exact figures, but I can tell you with 100% certainty, people were not allowed out of their houses here. Like in Melbourne right now, as I'm talking to you, Michael, I cannot go outside my house. It's illegal. I can't go beyond 5 kilometers from my house. It's also illegal. So by
Can you go out
simple,
in your backyard?
yes, but I can't go onto the street right now. So
But front yard too. So you can stay on your own property. You just can't go out onto any public property.
correct, correct.
Wow.
But if I was out in my front yard, I'd have to wear a mask. But the point I'm trying to make is simply because you cannot go anywhere, you have to
Yeah.
buy online. Hence, my mother, AirPods, Amazon. Now she's addicted. So there you go.
What about groceries? Are people buying a lot of groceries online? I imagine they would. There's a lot of competitors here in the States, like Instacart is one. A lot of grocery companies that have their own, delivery services now too. What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's actually a business here called Woolworths, which was formerly
Yeah.
Safeway, which I'm assuming you guys are familiar with.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
It used to be called Safeway anyway. It's called Woolworths. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is everybody gets delivery from Woolworths. So you can see the little green bags at the doors of people's
Okay.
houses. And what's interesting, Michael, I'm glad you asked, is they have decided to launch a marketplace as well. So,
Mm. There's a lot of, like Kroger, I think has some limited third party marketplace stuff. Target has limited as well, but they're definitely piloting that. I don't think it's going to quite get to the level that Amazon is, but Walmart's aggressively going after that third party business. So that's something that we've looked at and said, should we be providing a service for the brands that we're working with? A lot of people say, is your agency going to provide Shopify services? And I say no, because it's there's some crossover, but it's two totally different subject matters. And a lot of people that come from the e-commerce world and then pivot into Amazon, there's a big learning curve there. And so, and I've heard from a lot of prospects that, yeah, this bigger agency that helps e-commerce people said they had Amazon capabilities, but in reality, they didn't. They were just saying, yeah, okay, yeah, we can probably help. It's probably not that big of a deal, but there's a huge difference there. So pivoting, actually creating something that, a service that's going to work, it takes time and it takes a level of understanding. So you can't just, pivot across from that other side. But anyway, no, I've looked at other, marketplaces and said, what's going to be popular? Like eBay's has been around. It kind of started things. Amazon came up and took control of the reins, but they still have a place here. Walmart's starting to grow. There's a lot of other players that are starting to pop up. So watch out, Amazon. They're coming for you. James,
indeed.
tell people, James DeHajo people, woo! There's going to be no claps. That was just me doing the claps for you. But James, tell people if they want to find you, where should they look? Should they look in the basement? Should they look under a rock? Should they look in the trunk of a car? Where are people going to be able to find you?
Well, I think come to Australia and I'll be riding a kangaroo, as you guys probably think we all do.
We'll
but,
come with our cowboy hats and our
yeah.
and our horses.
But in all seriousness, LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. I don't have any social media like Facebook or Instagram. I have none of that, but I do have LinkedIn. So yeah.
How do you spell your last name? It's Diharjdo.
Diardjo.
DJ. Okay, I was so close. James DeHaja. Well, thanks so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate you being here, having the conversation. If you want to, get in touch with James, we'll have some details below wherever this is being displayed. There'll be some kind of information so you can reach out to James. But yeah, that was it, people. The end of the show is here. We've talked about retail. We know a little bit more about what's going on in Australia and outside the country. And if you are a brand that's wanting to expand, don't just look to Amazon, especially if you're digitally native. Look to other retailers as well, like Click Central, or if you're in Australia, or Catch. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Longer Game. We genuinely appreciate your time. And if you want to connect with us, please reach out to thelongergame.com. You can fill out a contact request form there. You can also find us on majority of the social media platforms, except for Twitter. That's the only one that we're not really on. This show is brought to you by my agency, Cartology. We're helping brands accelerate growth and become profitable on Amazon. If you'd like to know more, go to thinkcartology.com. fill out a contact form, and we'll get on the phone. That's what it's all about, connecting with you and building a relationship. This show is also brought to you by Arch DevOps. They are the ones that are helping make all the logistics of this podcast happen. We are so thankful for them. If you want to get your podcast up and running and you want to automate as many things as possible, go to archdevops.com. That's ARCHDEVOPS.com, and reach out to them. They can be super, super helpful. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day and be blessed.